Thank you, Rick. Thank you. Thank you. All right, good. See, is this on? Can you hear me? Move it up a little bit, maybe. Can you hear me now? Okay, good, good. Thank you so much, Rick. Pleasure to be with you guys, and thank you all for coming. A couple of the guys on the back row said they tried to get in with their dentist, but he wasn't open, so they decided to come see me. So I appreciate that, guys. I appreciate it. We're going to work very well together today. So I want to just sort of go through. We got some slides, some background on sort of what it is we in government community relations do, sort of highlight some of the things from the last legislative session as well. So thought I'd start out tell you, I'm a native Georgian, and in my family we do family reunions. And so I am asked at every family reunion each year, I'll have somebody that'll lean up to me and say, Dean, exactly what is it that you do? They're all perplexed. And so we worked on this in our office, and we came up with a 4-word definition for what it is that we do. And it's simply gentle pressure relentlessly applied. That is what we do. Now, we've got this slide here for you. This sort of says what we publicly do, but I just told you what we privately do. We're a little bit of a 3-legged stool. You see here the way we're made up, community relations, which is local relations. So think of going to the mayor's office, to city hall, that kind of thing. State relations and federal relations, how we're comprised. But what I would tell you, our whole mission really is focused around enhancing the image of Georgia Tech so that we can build support for its causes. That really is what it boils down to. So to start off with a little quiz for you here. We'll start off at the local level, okay? And so there are 15 Atlanta City Council members. Do you have any guesses as to how many of those might be Georgia Tech graduates? What do you think? Gordon, you can't answer. There's 2. All right, so, and our own Andre Dickens in OMED is one of those. And so we're real proud of him serving in that role. The other is Alex Wan, but 2 out of 15. All right, so let's go now to the state level. There are 236 members of the Georgia General Assembly in the House and Senate. And so how many do you think are Georgia Tech graduates? 236 members. Any guesses? That's very close, 8. They're now 10. We got double digits. And so, but still less than 5%. And so that's what it looks like at the State House when we go there. Now let's climb on up the ladder to the federal side, to Congress. So 535 members of Congress. So what's your guess there? I'll just tell you, the percentages don't get any better. You know what it is? 3. And so I share all that with you to say we have our work cut out for us in terms of how we educate the elected leaders about Georgia Tech and why they should support Georgia Tech. All right, here's a little bit of who we are. Here's where President Peterson and Chief of Staff Lynn Durham joined most of our team, minus Carly Slagle, who's with us here today because she was on assignment, and Robert Knotts was in D.C. on assignment. But this was Georgia Tech Student Day in the Capitol. So each year we go into the Capitol with the student leaders and try to educate lawmakers from the student perspective of what's going on and what's important to them as well as to us. And so particularly I wanted to introduce you to our team that's here with me today. See, they were bold and sat on the front row. So I appreciate that. But y'all stand up and turn around so that way these folks, if you see any of these people coming, run the other way. All right, Jeff's down here with federal relations, Carly, Stephanie is community relations, Casey helps state relations, Olivia does it all, and Laura Means is our communications expert. So thank y'all for being here with me today. All right, so who do we serve? We're asked this all the time. Again, who is it that you work with? Here you get a snapshot of some of the main groups that we work with. So yes, they include Congress, some of the folks we've talked about earlier, but they also include chambers of commerce, Atlanta Public Schools, work very closely with Rick and his team on some of the engagement there. Every week working with the Office of the Governor. But these are some of the folks we interact with, and we typically are the first ones that some of these folks, not necessarily all, but that we'll be the first ones they might call to say we have a question, we have an issue, we need your help on something. So we try to manage their care so that they walk away with a great first impression of Georgia Tech. And then when we need support, we sort of open the door to go back and try to secure that support. That really is what it's all about. So we view ourselves as a service operation for both the Institute as well as these stakeholders here, again, building and maintaining these relationships that are mutually beneficial. And that's to us, what it's all about is the relationship side of the house. I mean, that's really what we do day in and day out. So I'm going to go through a lot of pictures and things to sort of help you sort of see firsthand what it is we're doing when we're out and about across the state, because we're often not here. And so ways we engage. First thing we want to talk about just briefly is the President's Summer Tour. I mean, many of you know about this, the Georgia Tour. On the left side there, you see the route in black there where we're headed in just a couple of weeks. A little bit more of a metro-centric this year tour, because we had found that we were just simply driving past all those folks on the outer perimeter in order to get to all the other areas of Georgia, and we needed to make sure we see those folks. So that's where we're going this year, but you can't quite see it, but all the other gold in there are places that we have been in the past. But even as I speak, right now today, our team, we've been involved with development, with our friends from Institute Communications, with the Alumni Association, and with the Office of the President to put together the tour that is coming up again, like I said, next month. And every year, really, since President and Mrs. Peterson came to Tech, they have been great about getting out with us into the state to meet with businesses, lawmakers, regents, parents, students, alumni, media, you name it. On the right over here, we thought that'd be neat to show you, because neither one of these guys have anything really to do with Georgia Tech. On the left, this is Senator Butch Miller from Gainesville. Carly used to work for Senator Miller in the Capitol. And on the right is Senator John Wilkinson from up in the northeast corner of the state. Again, not Georgia Tech guys, but we try to cultivate those relationships while we're on the road seeing folks, and they've just become fantastic supporters of Georgia Tech. Thought you'd get a kick out of this too. Again, working with Institute Communications, they do such a great job of helping us to reach Georgians outside of Atlanta, which is so critical for our relationships in the Capitol. So here on the left, as part of the summer tour, President Peterson was visiting with State Senator Tim Golden. Reason we put this up, because that was on the front page of the Valdosta Daily Times the day after our visit. And it was just fantastic. Actually, Senator Golden got a few threatening phone calls from some alumni of some other schools, but he has remained a friend. And what was neat about it is I had another state representative at a lunch that we attended that day at that location. He sort of leaned into me and says, "Great to have Georgia Tech down here today in Valdosta." And he said, and then he sort of said, "Because UGA's been plowing this ground for a long time." And so we're delighted, and President Peterson, like I said, great to get out and help us do this. So on the right is from the Dublin Courier-Herald newspaper, and you can sort of see the headline they put in their paper for yourself. And so I'd say, what does this accomplish? It simply shows to me that we care about the state and that we are invested in the people of the state. That really is what the message is for us. So it gets better. It gets better. You didn't know we had the fearless First Lady. We all know her as the Queen Bee. But here she is on the right at an alligator farm down in Camilla, Georgia. And this, again, is part of the Georgia tour. And so we have an alum who was a poultry guy, actually. I mean, he is a really innovative guy, but he was in the poultry business doing great down in Camilla and started realizing there was big opportunity in the alligator business. And so we went to see him along with local lawmakers and such in that area. But on the left, this picture here with the peaches, that picture, y'all, was taken, I bet it wasn't even 100 days after the Petersons arrived at Georgia Tech. So one of the first things they said to us was, help us connect with the people of Georgia. And so we went down into Middle Georgia to a peach orchard. And what was great about it is that the owner of this particular orchard, some of you may have been there, Lane Orchards, he was focused on wanting to know how can he work with Georgia Tech to look at a little bit of the automation of the peach orchard industry and how he sorts, the peaches by size and all this kind of stuff. And so the Petersons were fantastic at jumping out there. But again, I show you this because it just goes to show how we work to connect Georgia Tech to the state of Georgia. Other ways we engage and work very closely with our student body here at Georgia Tech. And that's one of the most fun things of my job. I'm an alum, so I really love this place, have a deep love for Georgia Tech, and so being able to stay connected to the students is really, really neat. I've heard President Peterson say one of the neat things about all of our jobs is that all of us may be getting a year older every year in our lives, but for some reason we keep having the good fortune of working with 18 to 22-year-olds, and their age seems to never change, right? And it is neat. It makes us all feel young. These are students that we placed in the state capitol last year, and they worked in internships in what we call the Georgia Legislative Intern Program. We also have, Jeff helps to manage the Federal Jackets Fellowship. So we place students also with different opportunities in Washington, D.C., and that is, again, a fantastic opportunity. We've had students that have done both. I think Jen Abrams, our student body president, outgoing, did both. And so we've had a lot of good participation there. And frankly, Casey and I will hear in the Capitol folks that actually requesting Georgia Tech interns, as you might imagine. They are really given some heavy assignments. These aren't just sort of light assignments. So those are fun for us to be able to take part in. Also, just again, I mentioned Jen Abrams. Nigella, the newest elected SGA president of the undergraduate student body, we work closely with her as well. I'll get to the Board of Regents in a little bit, but that's probably a big area we work with the student leaders, is looking at Board of Regents initiatives and things they're working on. We also serve as a resource, though, for the college Republicans and the college Democrats, the students that are in those groups. Many times we'll get a call from some campaign or somebody that wants to hold an event here, and of course Board of Regents rules will prevent us from engaging in any sort of campaign type level of engagement, and so we go to the students basically and say, if you so choose, if you want to, it's up to you, we'll be happy to support you. So this here shows a little bit of the DC and the federal side, the advocacy that was taken up with the other members of the ACC. And this was sort of neat. We Georgia Tech actually led it. We were the ones that put this together last year, where a group of our student leaders had the opportunity to go to Washington with other ACC students and go essentially share perspectives that were similar with our congressional delegation and with their respective congressional delegations. So flying through a little bit on ways we engage, I didn't want to miss the opportunity to tell you that one of the real big ways that we engage today that wasn't necessarily the case, oh gosh, y'all, 10 years ago or so, I would have never told you that I was going to be so involved in economic development. But that is a huge way now that our office is working with the governor's office and others throughout the state. Here we just put up a few logos that represent some of the organizations and companies at the state, the local, and the federal level where we are building relationships for Georgia Tech and serving the state of Georgia. So this in turn provides those opportunities for our students as well as research partnerships for faculty. I don't have up here one of the logos, EasyGo. But a great example is when we were in Augusta. President Peterson went and toured EasyGo, and one of the executives with EasyGo said, gosh, y'all students are amazing. Y'all send us these great co-ops, and we had one last year. We were having a real challenge on one of these electric converter boxes in one of our golf carts, and it was your student, Bobby Davis, that came in and fixed it and got us back up and running. And he said, to this very day, everybody in the entire plant calls that particular piece the Bobby box, after one of our students who helped solve that problem. So we hear notes like that and stories like that all the time. One in particular, King's Hawaiian up here, Rick and I were just talking about it. They're in Gainesville. Maybe you've had the good fortune of having some of their good roles. They came to us really through the governor's office and through Regent Philip Wilhite, where again we were helping them with their sort of assembly line and their work there to streamline the process there. Our EI Squared folks do a great job of working with those folks out there in the industry. But this relationship has produced, among other successes, the only known photo of President Peterson in a hairnet. Now, do not tell him that I put this up, okay? When you see him later, do not tell him. But this picture actually ran in the Gainesville newspaper. So that was a great opportunity, again, to visit with those folks. And I should mention on the far right is Doug Britton, who's with GTRI. So it just goes to show you, again, the partnerships that exist between EI Squared, GTRI, all of our different pieces of the puzzle coming together. Okay, so the first leg of the three-legged stool, community relations, local government relations. I wanted to put this up here to give you just a glimpse. These are just a few of the things that Stephanie and Chris Burke. Chris Burke is not with us today. His son is graduating from school, and so we're excited that he's enjoying that opportunity. But we really are the liaison between the Institute and Atlanta City Hall. And just the other day, we were visiting with some of the mayor's folks. Really every week, we'll be engaging on different topics with the mayor and his team. And also, though, we're engaged in the surrounding neighborhoods. We hear that quite often. It's very important for us to show that We are visible and interested in the West Side communities, in Home Park, in Midtown, Centennial Place, all those places. And Chris and Stephanie work very closely also with the Atlanta Public School System. Chris even serves over here on the board for the Centennial Place school across the street over here. You may see them around campus. I mean, they're all over. We've had them over here, y'all, for field day, and we've had them over for Stephanie for graduation. So a great partnership exists with our local school, and really that comes from the top. President Peterson was really adamant about us engaging with the local schools that are right here across the sort of across North Avenue. And again, I mentioned earlier, be remiss not to mention again, the great work that Andre Dickens is doing as our city councilman and working right here in OMID. So he knows us so well and is helping very much to ensure that when things come forward, we all have our eyes on those things as it relates to our local, again, government scene. Summer camps down there at the bottom, many of you are involved in those. We try to steer folks to the right place. Rick knows too, we'll have lots and lots of middle schoolers and others that not quite ready for admissions, but they're interested in Georgia Tech. So we try to just pave the road a little bit there so that when those folks are looking at opportunities down the road, they've already had a good experience coming to Georgia Tech. All right, so how about another leg of the stool, federal relations, shifting sort of to the federal side and what we do in D.C. You see a few of these things here. We're always focused on what does Georgia Tech think. But Robert Knotts, again, is located there. He's our director. Jeff was here. He had to run to a meeting. He's the deputy director. It's the two of them. Robert is full-time in D.C., and Jeff is full-time here. And so a lot of back and forth, as you would imagine. But our effort there is really to promote Georgia Tech as a thought leader, as well as engaging in the advocacy on the federal initiatives that are impactful to Georgia Tech. Many of you may know this is one of the ways we do that, try to elevate our visibility. So just this past month, we had two speakers from the federal level come down for graduation, right? So Secretary of Commerce, Penny Pritzker, spoke at graduation. And then for the master's PhD ceremony, we had the director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, John Holdren, come and speak. And so those were two great opportunities to sort of, again, showcase Georgia Tech for important federal leaders. And then 2 days ago, y'all, I mean, this is like this all the time. It never seems to stop, and it's a wonderful thing. Secretary of Energy, Ernest Moniz, was here on campus and really spent quite a bit of time on campus from GTRI, where he was over at the Quadrennial Energy Institute or Review. He was there for that particular event that he held, but then he had other campus opportunities to see and visit with our folks, so that was great. Little side note here, I know some of you may know, but others may not, so I decided I want to make sure that you don't leave here without me sharing this, and that is that our very own junior United States Senator David Perdue is a Georgia Tech graduate. And so when I said earlier, you know, we had 3 members of Congress, Senator David Perdue is one of those 3. The other is a congressman from Florida and a congressman from Ohio. So Senator Perdue would be your Georgia Tech alum representing the state now for us. Now a little bit of federal trivia before I move on to other things. I got to share this with you. In terms of the dollar amount of federal research grants that we receive at Georgia Tech, some of you may know, you may be in this area, but it's worth pointing out. $488 million was the last annual sort of checkpoint. So $488 million, and that's just in the federal monies we receive for research, out of a total of $648 million total. So the other would be industry and other related funds that came in. Now we're trying to diversify that a little better, not rely quite so much on the federal side, but it just goes to show you how important the work that Robert and Jeff are doing to try to position us so that these opportunities are available for tech. And by the way, that $488 million is among the very top, not at the top, but among the top in terms of dollar amounts that schools like us receive that don't have a medical school. So if you don't have a medical school and you're getting $488 million from the feds, you are way up there at the tip of the spear. So it's very, very good for us. Share with you one last thing on the federal side you get a kick out of and give you a glimpse into the job that President Peterson has. So we were up in D.C., Robert and I took President Peterson in to see, and we're always going to different places, not just the Georgia delegation. So this particular day, we were going to go see Senator Lamar Alexander from Tennessee. He was a former United States Secretary of Education. He's done lots of things, highly regarded. So he told us this story. He really told President Peterson this story. he looked at him and he said, yeah, I got to tell you, I was with a reporter the other day, and the reporter was talking to me and said, Senator Alexander, you've done so many amazing things in your career. You were the governor of the state of Tennessee. You were the president of the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. You've been the United States Secretary of Education, a cabinet level position. Now you're a U.S. Senator. The different constituencies and the things you faced. I mean, tell me, Senator, which of those four, is the most difficult job you've held? Senator Alexander just sort of looked at President Peterson and he said, I told that reporter, obviously you've never been a university president or you wouldn't ask such a ridiculous question. So I thought, yeah, okay, I see that. President Peterson's got a hard job, okay? So let's shift over into some state conversation, because we're a state institution. This is where we spend a lot of our time, dealing particularly with those three entities that we put up there on the other side of the Capitol slide there. And so I just want to share with you a little bit about how we engage and what we do at the state level. Clearly, a lot of what we do is budget. That's for sure. Budget related. It'll be the same going forward year after year. The great news is that this is the 5th consecutive year that we've had an overall increase in our allocation. You see that Georgia Tech state appropriation column. Those are the dollars that we receive from the system office. And so you see the budget downturn and its impact, but boom, we're moving back in the right direction. So what I would just share with you there is that the university system has maintained, in Tech 2, has maintained a consistent percentage. So even though the numbers move back and forth, I talked to a lot of people in other states who were saying, President Peterson will be the first one to tell you that. I think in Colorado they had moved to about 6%, 5% in that range. We have really been steady at 10 to 11% of whatever the state takes into the checkbook, they give back out to higher ed. It's just that when that checkbook balance gets a little low, ours gets a little low. But at least the percentage has been constant. Ripping through a few more stats for you, just to throw out here in case somebody asks you other good news for the state of Georgia. Compared to other states, again, we are 11th, if you look on this chart here, 11th and highest for state funding in terms of per full-time student. So that also is a point of pride for us. And I'll tell you, too, when we are around the country talking to other folks, they are envious of our state. There are a lot of people who say to us, how is it that the state of Georgia still operates with only one Board of Regents system? Many states have multiple systems, all going down to the Capitol and knocking heads and competing. They'll also say, how is it that your Hope Scholarship has been working for over 20 years and y'all haven't cannibalized it yet and supplanted it and done other things with it? So there are many points of pride there for what we've been able to do as a state. Now, getting into what I know you wanted to hear a little bit more about. This most recent, I hit something here. Let me go back. There it is. The most recent legislative session. Share with you some background. First of all, the Georgia General Assembly meets every year, beginning in early January, for 40 working days, so they can start and stop the clock. So we never know quite when we're going to finish. This past year we finished in March. There have been years we don't finish till late April. But as many of you are aware, there was a legislator last year, certainly, that wasn't satisfied with the way our student due process, misconduct, and other issues were being administered. You may know that he held a public hearing, invited President Peterson to come and attend that particular hearing, which of course he did. Ultimately, the student due process issues were resolved by the Board of Regents to apply to all 29 public schools. That was sort of how the matter was resolved. But it became a major distraction, no doubt about it. And it disrupted the normal advocacy process that we go through in the Capitol. This was my 26th legislative session in a row. I've never had anything quite like it. And so it really changed sort of how we navigated the channel, so to speak. So in light of this, and since we did have some additional pre-construction work to complete on the library, we made the decision, talked to the chancellor, went and met with the governor's team, that we would voluntarily withdraw the request for the library funding to allow us to continue to do this pre-construction work and then be well positioned to go back in next year to get the construction monies to move forward. So that's sort of where we are with that. Actually, it's sort of funny the way the lines look. We don't need to have a line through the ATDC expansion. I'll tell you, that's a good news item there. But I wanted to leave you with, we are well positioned on the library for next year to go back in and receive the construction dollars on that. So the next one, though, ATDC. Over the course of 2 years, they actually added almost $1.8 million there to their budget, and you know them as the state startup business incubator. Just had a great impact on our economy. Let's talk a little faster and go through these quicker for you, but the system-wide request, we'll jump to that. Really pleased that all three of those things came together. The carry forward provision, I mean, it was really tough this year because we had campus carry, and then we had carry forward. We had to be really careful when we started talking about a carry provision. But this is the good one. This is the one that allows us to carry forward a little bit of money from one fiscal year to the next so that you don't have to burn it all up at the end of the fiscal year. So we did get that particular bill passed. And also, of course, not on here, but certainly something we worked very hard on with the governor's office and the chancellor's team is the 3% merit-based salary pool, which, you know, we all hopefully are in a good spot to benefit from that. All right, so now, what I wanted to do now, before I get into more specifics about the session, I've got for you, this is just about a little 30-second clip here, give you a little snapshot, okay, of the divisive political climate, if you will, that we face every day, not just in Georgia, but really in the entire nation. It's a short video clip. I've got two state representatives debating the campus carry legislation. Okay, these are just little short clips from their speeches. But as you know, this would have allowed concealed carry on campus. Everybody knows about it. The governor vetoed it. We celebrated with him and appreciated him. Now, what I would tell you, both of these guys you're about to see are our friends. Everybody in that Capitol, we work very closely with and try to build a strong alliance with. So that's the way it sort of works. But this will give you a glimpse, I think, into the challenge that we face and really how well-meaning Georgians can be so bitterly opposed on an issue. So just watch this here. I will try.
I heard some of the folks talk in defense of the university system. Well, I beg to differ, but you know, the university system, even though they may think they're in fact the fourth branch of government, they're not. The third branch of government, one of the three branches of government, is the legislature. And it's up for us to set policy and pass code statute. And that's what this bill is all about.
So again, he's talking about campus carry. This is Representative Alan Powell from up in Hartwell, Georgia. So, right sort of on the opposite side of the equation, here you get to hear from Representative Al Williams from down in Savannah area, also a good friend. Listen to what he had to say.
Let's get something clear. I couldn't help but remember what Representative Tom DeLay, during his heyday from Texas, said. He said, politics is not about logic, it is about emotion. And what we have here in this bill is a little skunk that's been wrapped in silk and dipped in Chanel No. 5. This ain't no gun control bill. It's got nothing to do. But it's a great political year ploy because the majority of the voters don't want it. Your college presidents don't want it. Your high school principals don't want it. The superintendents don't want it. And anybody who ever went to college should know better than wanting it.
So they give you a little glimpse into... Yeah, this is normal. What you see behind you happening is totally normal. Somebody will be in the well speaking to a bill, and others will be getting up, going about their business. And so every now and then the speaker will take that gavel and say the House will come to order. But until he says that, there's all this yipping and yapping and all kinds of stuff going on the entire time. And so I thought this would give you a little glimpse, rather than me explaining it. You get to see it firsthand, how it happens. And then the fact that Casey and I and a lot on our team are having to go meet with these folks and help them to hopefully see our perspective, particularly Chairman Alan Powell, the first guy you heard speak. And we get criticized all the time, y'all, being the fourth branch of government. They don't like the autonomy and so forth sometimes. This is just part of it. But anyway, both of these guys are our good friends. We'll continue to work with them. But it reminded me, I'll share this quick snippet with you here. I used to work when I was a young guy, I had a lot of hair. I know it's hard to believe. I worked for Governor Zell Miller. And one time, Governor Zell Miller was in a debate with another candidate. And just to show you how folks can be completely opposite on these things, he said, and this is truly as only Governor Miller could basically say something like this. He said, most Georgians aren't far left. Most Georgians aren't far right. Most Georgians are in Walmart looking for a good deal and a fair price. and we love that and said, you know, that's a lot of truth in that. Wise man. So continuing on, some of the challenges, some of the successes, talked a little bit about this. But you see here, we put campus carry in both categories because y'all, I mean, during the session, absolutely, it was a humongous challenge. You might not have really seen or heard every day, but I'll tell you that President Peterson was down there all the time talking to people behind closed doors. Most of the thing in the Capitol, you have to know, the protesters and the folks who are really, you know, being loud and noisy, they don't achieve anything. The people who go behind the closed doors, start thoughtfully talking about solutions, trying to drive something toward a compromise. That's where it usually works. So there was a lot of that going on, and you can be proud too that your student leaders were right in the middle of doing that too. They were down there all the time sharing handwritten notes to the governor himself. All kinds of very positive things were happening to try to persuade that to go the right direction. But we're not out of the woods, y'all. I mean, that's been 5-6 years, I think, that I've been dealing with it. It'll come right back, and we'll just continue to fight the fight. It's really a national thing, too. It is just sweeping across the nation in terms of other legislatures looking at this. So we'll continue, is what I'll tell you there. We're all grateful to the governor on that, but we'll continue that conversation. Others there, tuition cap legislation. You may say, oh, what's that? Well, yeah, we look at tuition in terms of we would like the Board of Regents to have the flexibility to assess the fullness of the state budget and of our tuition and to be able to decide what is best. Tuition cap legislation was a little bit of a threat that was sort of put out there to say we're going to cap tuition, we the legislature, to the rate of inflation or lower, and not give the Board of Regents the autonomy to do what may need to be done in certain years. You know, this year they kept it flat. The Regents kept it completely flat. But we would certainly try to prevent us from being handcuffed, if you will. When we talk about us being a reputation-driven industry, and it's taken years and years for the state of Georgia to grow to the point where we have 2 public universities, us and that one up the road a little bit, in the top 25, in the public top 25. Very few states can say that, but you could erode it just like that if you begin to sort of undermine how we built this. So just be aware of that. So library construction, told you a little bit about where we are with that. We've already talked to the Board of Regents about positioning us on the FY18 list, and we feel very positive about the way that was handled and done. And there comes a time, Casey and I talked about this in the Capitol, where you almost have to look at where you are today and say, okay, we're in a bad spot here, but we have a choice about how we handle this. And if we handle this with, hopefully, with grace and with poise, then we can position ourselves the next year to be in a good spot. But if we start whining and then we start going down a path that we've seen others go down, then we'll basically be using up the 2017 session by what we do today. And hopefully we didn't do that, and I think we're in good shape there. Just a couple more. I don't need to get into all the others. I told you some about them. But the Hope STEM legislation, we'll mention that one. That one's really cool for our students. They're very excited about this. They'll get a half a point bump for any STEM course. This is not just Georgia Tech. This is across the university system and the technical college system. We'll be identifying courses that are STEM courses. And a student who takes that course, let's say he gets a 3.0, a B in that course, his Hope calculated or her Hope calculated GPA would be a 3.5. They get a half a point bump only for their Hope calculated GPA, not the Georgia Tech GPA. So it's quite meaningful to the students. They're really excited about that. That's if they get a B, C, or a D in a Hope course, in a STEM course, they would get that bump. And actually, we're real tickled. The governor knew that Georgia Tech students were very interested in that legislation, so he invited us down for the bill signing ceremony just a couple of weeks ago to his office, and that was a great opportunity to be with him. Again, wrapping up here, I want to leave time for some questions if you've got them. This is just a tight little snapshot of some of the most watched bills that we covered. We actually ended up really right at 100 bills overall we were tracking, trying to make sure it did not impact Georgia Tech in an adverse sort of way. You'd be amazed at all the stuff that comes up, and you really have to watch every code section and see what might pop up. Several things here maybe to point out here, just that while it would be nice for us just to be able to work on all this proactive, positive stuff, we spend a tremendous amount of our time playing defense. And I don't even know if we have up there, but one of them was just like bills that would limit the kinds of scientific research that you can do. So we're having to sort of combat that and try to ensure that that doesn't pop up. Of course, fighting the campus carry has been a big one. There are always several that we are trying to combat, as well as from time to time we'll have other good stuff that we can promote, and that's always a positive too. Okay, let's see here. Moving through here. Oh, I just wanted to put this up because Rick and I had talked a little bit about just sharing with you, how can you advocate? I mean, what can you do? Thought it would be important, first of all, just to let you know what the university system of Georgia says we can't do. And that is, they say, hey, you want to run for local elected office like our friend Andre Dickens did? Absolutely, go for it. You can serve in local elected office. You cannot run for a state or federal level office and be an employee of the USG. But basically this policy, and this is right out of the university system's policy book, they encourage you to be involved, but they just sort of remind all of us that we have to be careful about how we do it. It needs to be on our own time, on our own computer, on our own personal iPhone, all those kinds of things. Where we get in trouble, and almost every year, there'll be some school, I think it might have been in Milledgeville, there's always a school that you'll hear had somebody maybe cross a boundary. Sometimes they weren't quite aware there was that boundary, and so they have to be careful about that, sort of intersecting their state employee status with trying to work in terms of promoting a campaign or a particular issue. And so I just thought we'd put that up there for your, just for your general awareness. Again, closing out, other ways you can advocate for Georgia Tech, sort of share your support. The Capitol Buzz is on the far right over here. And so Casey and Laura helped put this together. And it's a bi-weekly newsletter during the session to keep the campus community informed. You can go to this website at the bottom right and just sign up to get that. Be delighted to make sure you receive that information. It'll keep you plugged in as to what we're doing. In the Capitol, and how you can stay informed and also engaged with your own lawmakers. This one on the left, I thought that'd be sort of neat to share with you one last story on this one. On the right is David Jackson, and he is a Georgia Tech graduate who lives in Winder. And so we have actually, Casey's put together what we call the Capitol Jackets Network. And they're a group of Georgia Tech alumni that live all over the state, particularly in some of our key legislative districts. And they have volunteered to help us carry the Georgia Tech message to their local lawmaker. So what we basically do is we try to find the lawmaker who obviously is in a position to help Georgia Tech. That's important. Then we go and we look for, okay, who do we have that's an alumni in Winder that can help us reach Representative Terry England and share the Georgia Tech message. Because Representative Terry England on the left, he's a great friend of ours. But he also knows that we're paid employees. We're down there, of course, to talk about Georgia Tech. David Jackson here is not a paid employee. He just loves Georgia Tech. And so we've gone up to Winder on many occasions. I can't tell you how many biscuits, yes, biscuits, I've had at the Dairy Queen in Winder. Okay? Yeah, you didn't think Dairy Queen served biscuits, but they do. And so this was neat because Representative Terry England came to the Georgia Tech campus for his first ever visit to our campus. And we decided we would have him out on the football field and put his name up on the scoreboard on the back and all this good stuff with David Jackson. Well, one reason we did that is because Terry England is a UGA alum. His wife works for the university. They live right in the shadows of the arch over there. And so we just thought we'd have some fun with it. And he loved it. And he put this picture up in his office. So about a month later, the president of the University of Georgia went in his office and saw this picture framed on his credenza in his office. It wasn't shortly thereafter that he had one on Sanford Stadium's turf as well. So we've had some fun, and I say that in jest because we're really great collaborators, I think, between UGA and Georgia Tech, and we always having a lot of fun in the Capitol with sort of how we do these things and work these things. All right, so to wrap it up, you heard of the 5 Ps? Some of you have. Lance, don't answer. But some of you have heard the 5 Ps. We talk about this. And And so these are the areas of our state where there's a thriving industry, and if we can do anything here at Tech with our research and with our faculty that affects one of the 5 Ps, it's usually a home run. And we can get funding for it, and we can work that item forward and work that issue forward. So, all right, I'm going to give you the first one now, and I know you got some guesses, okay? So, all right, let's go with pecans as the first one, or pecans if you're from southwest part of the state. Any others? Give me some. You know, yes, poultry's in here. Peaches, that's in here. Peanuts and pines. Oh, Howard, oh, you got them all. You guys scored an A+ on this exam. So yeah, it's really this is something that Senator Isaacson has said quite a bit, and we all sort of latched onto. It's very true, in that our folks at GTRI are working in a lot of these areas. We have a lot of faculty members who are working. You look at ag; it's still the #1 industry in the state, but we have some really amazing technology that's being applied to the ag industry. So we're trying to listen to those opportunities and share those with lawmakers so that we don't sort of miss an opportunity there. So, all right, let me end with that. And I did pretty good as far as leaving 10, 12 minutes for questions. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Try to.
I want to take your questions. While you're doing that, though, if you don't mind passing the note cards over to the far right. And then I will just say that yesterday my mom was in Vienna, Georgia,
Oh, yeah.
at a chicken factory doing an enrollment in benefits for all their employees.
All right.
And made the mistake of mentioning what I do. And it turned out positive for Georgia Tech in the end, but she said one lady did start crying because apparently it didn't go so well for her son in the admission process. So I think they still signed up for health benefits.
That happens. That's been, yes, that happens. I'll tell you this, and if you think of a question, ask me a question. But what we've done is we've tried to learn in our office, and our team will tell you that we just simply try to learn how to say no in such a way that we're not actually using that word, those 2 letters. It's sort of like, well, here's another path where we might achieve that goal or that type of thing. We use that quite a bit in trying to, not just, on the admission side, but on lots of things. And I know they get sick and tired up here, my team, of hearing me talk about, we have sort of a little bit of a sunset rule. And that's where, we don't want to say no before the sun goes down. But when we have these calls that come in all day, every day from these legislative offices and all, we try to respond to them before the sun goes down and try to say, we don't have an answer for you today, but we're working on that. And that helps, I think, in terms of our relationship building. So. What do you got? Questions? Anybody? If you have a really hard one, I got the A-team up here on the front row, too, to help me respond. Wow, this is easy.
One question is, you mentioned campus carry and how you've already been dealing with it for a couple of years and you think it'll come back, and that there's a lot of states, or there's a trend.
Yeah.
What are some of the states that already have that bill, and then do you have any kind of prognostication on how it will come back or what that will look like?
Yeah, we're hopeful that first of all, it just sort of varies. Right now, several states are considering it, but there are 8 or 9, I think, Casey, now that actually have pure campus carry, sort of like what we were dealing with. There are others that have variations of it, where they allow the system to decide, and different institutions can sort of employ rules. There's some that have like a firearms locker where you can bring it and lock it up. There's a variety of ways that folks are sort of looking at this. But we're hopeful that because of what Governor Deal did in terms of with the veto, he also had an executive order that mandated that those of us in the university system would prepare a campus safety type report. And by August 1, all 29 schools have to submit a report that says, here's what we're doing in terms of campus safety and what we commit to doing going forward to ensure that our campuses are as safe as possible. So we're hopeful that that information is going to shine a little bit of a light on what we're doing and how we're going to go forward to ensure campus safety. But I do believe that there's a contingent there in the state capitol that feels like this is something that is just got to be done from their perspective. And I really believe that they'll be back and they'll put that bill forward. And we may see them put some things in there that try to appease a little bit what the governor was asking for. Like maybe they'll be banned at daycare centers or certain things like that that were brought up during the session. But we feel like that item is going to come right back. We talked to colleagues across the country. You know, Texas, as you maybe have followed, they're dealing with the implementation of it right now. And that was one of the most scary things for us, folks, is just that if that bill did go into law, we were going to have an incredibly short window to try to figure out how to implement just the guidelines of how this would work. But we'll stay right back on top of it. And what you're seeing in the Capitol, again, is just it's just a different time now where you get a lot of folks, you don't have a lot of folks who necessarily sort of pull to the middle. You have a lot of folks that feel very strongly about differing viewpoints, and that's fine. That's, of course, the way the system works. But it makes it a little bit of a challenge to sort of find the compromise legislation that you used to find more of. Anything else? Good. You guys are an easy crowd. Thanks for taking it so easy on me. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
For those of you who registered, we have your email addresses, and we're going to follow up with a survey. Again, one of the biggest things we're looking for is